I kept looking over my shoulder into the back seat because it felt like someone was in the car with me. And I just believed today that was death. He was riding with me and he was just waiting, for me to close my eyes. And I kept trying to hold my eyes open because I knew the moment that I closed my eyes that I was gonna lift them up in hell.
In December of 1993, Kim Ivory was shot through the chest as he sped away from a drug deal that had gone wrong.
I never felt fear like this before. I had been freebasing cocaine since '82. My life had taken a drastic spiral down. I began to do things that wouldn't bother my conscience that normally would have.
Selling drugs and stealing had become a way of life. When he was 30, Kim was sentenced to prison for strong-arm robbery. While inside, he sought to clean up his life.
I didn't want drugs back in my life. In my mind, in my heart, I didn't want it.
Released a year and a half later, he went home with hopes of staying clean. But as hard as he tried, the old habit came back.
It took me hostage, and I seen me handcuffed to this addiction. Couldn't find a way out. Tried everything, detox centers, tried rehabilitation, 12-step programs, a number of times, but just never could get myself out. It got worse.
He continued running street hustles. One night in December, a dispute flared up at a drug meet.
A guy went into his coat. He pulled out a .38 caliber. Blood was coming out of my ears and coming out of my nose, and then my chest was full of blood. Death was in the car with me. He was riding with me, and he was just waiting, for me to close my eyes. I began to call on God to save my life. I told him I was sorry, and that I was sorry for doing the things I did, shaming my family name, and I just asked him to come in my life and just save me. I don't want to go to hell. I want to die. I don't want to go to hell.
Kim pulled into a parking lot where he passed out. A security guard found him and called 911.
When I woke up, I was in the ambulance, and the paramedics, one paramedic was taking the oxygen mask off my face. He was looking down on me, and he was speaking to the other paramedic, and he said, he's not breathing. And the other paramedic just looked at me and shook his head and put his head down. And at that time, my eyes began to get heavy again. It got so heavy that no matter how hard I tried to hold them open, seemed like someone had a hold to them and was just pulling them down. And the darkness began to come again.
At the hospital, doctors fought to save his life. They managed to stabilize him, but couldn't remove the bullet because it was too close to his spine.
I was just so glad that Jesus gave me another chance. I'm gonna turn it around now.
As he recovered, he went to a revival at his sister's church. After the service, Kim went forward for prayer from the minister.
He laid his hand on my chest and he began to pray. He said, go on home. Now everything's gonna be all right.
Back at the house, Kim grew restless.
I felt a warmth come over my body. I never felt a feeling like this in my life. When I got into the bedroom, I sat down on the edge of the bed and I grabbed my socks and I bent over to put my sock on, and I felt something hit me in the front of my mouth. And I just held my hand covering my mouth, and I was like, uh-oh. I eased my hand open to just peek at it. And when the more I opened my hand and I saw that bullet sitting in my hand, I just began to scream and holler. I couldn't say words. I was just screaming and hollering.
That night, Kim shared his miraculous story back at the church. As word of his testimony spread, he was asked to speak at churches around the country. However, a new problem arose.
The pressure of having to live right because everybody watching me. I gotta walk as though I'm walking on eggshells, and I gotta say the right thing all the time. I gotta do the right thing all the time. And that began to be a pressure on me. And so eventually I ended up back where I started. Sometimes we think that when people give their life to the Lord, that things should change overnight.
For 7 more years, Kim struggled with his addictions.
I found myself getting angry with God. Why you allow me to come back here? I began to give up. Like, wow, what was it all for? Could I ever be delivered? You know, could he deliver me?
At an arraignment for failure to appear in court, Kim heard about Teen Challenge. He decided to enroll in their year-long drug recovery program, hoping it would be the change he needed.
I read the Bible constantly. It was there that I learned how to have an intimate relationship with the Lord, and he began to show me how to be disciplined and how to allow the Spirit of God to overtake my life and to let him have the greater influence in my life. It was just so real for me. I was free. And the enemy didn't have no power over me. Satan didn't have no power over me. Drugs didn't have no power over me.
Kim has been living drug-free since 2001.
I thank God for my life. I thank God even for the struggle now, because I know the struggle that I went through, God is going to use that to show others that you're not the only one going through something, and that he knows all about it, and that he's a deliverer. Whatever your situation going on in your life right now, that God is able, and I'm a living witness, a living example, that God is able to turn it around, and God is able to defeat that thing, because greater is he that's in you than anything that's in this world.